There we go. Now we can do it. Okay. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We are here together again, another day, another evening, and we're gonna continue talking about Lojong or mind training. Last week we talked a little bit, a lot of blah blah blah, but we are starting slowly to get into what we're gonna talk about, the real topic. I said to Anthony and to the people from the center that normally you can do these, you can do these teachings on Lojong maybe. I don't know, 1 day, 2 days, you can do it, depending on how many hours. And then I said to them, yes, but I talk a lot, and I don't have many things to say. So I just talk a lot, but I don't have many things to say. But I might need a little bit more of time. Because the thing which is very important about the Lojong, which it's about mind training. But as we said, especially last week, is that we need to understand or try to understand what is the mind, so we can understand how we can train the mind and what does it actually means to train the mind. No, because otherwise we just go into this idea of like training the mind the same way that we just train the body. So we just go to the gym, but we don't even know, what type of what type of bodies we have or what is the best for our bodies. So that's the idea, that we can truly understand more and more the idea of how the mind works. So when we start to go into the more detailed part of the training the mind, we can better do it. We can do it in a better way. We can kind of like understand a little bit more. So today we're going to continue that. As one of my precious teachers, Kundrala Rinpoche, she's now in America. She's actually in New York. She's a very special woman, very, very, very special holy being. She's from Tibet, and since she was very young, she used to have all of these incredible experiences. And she is what we call, yeah, she's one person that's very connected with the Dalai Lama. And she's an incredible teacher, but she's very, very humble. And she says, I don't know anything about Dharma, but she has these experiences, very, so you can see when she talks, it comes from a true place. And she always says something that the more and more I think that is very important, that we're going to spend some time here together, for the next hour or so. And in order for it to be useful, we need to then try to generate a motivation for it to be useful. Otherwise, if we are not generating a useful motivation or a beneficial motivation for the time we are together, then it's a waste of time. I like that. I think that is very good because let's face it, we waste a lot of our times already with sometimes not useful things or not meaningful conversations or situations that are really not helping us to become better human beings. Some of them we have not so much of a choice. But when we have a choice like you came here because of a choice, because you wanted to come and join these talks. So we can try to then give a direction to it. Motivation is the compass, as I like to say, is what is going to bring us to a certain place, but we need to decide what place we want to get. So I'm going to invite you to just, for a brief moments, we try to generate a motivation. And I always like to generate a motivation by, if you want, just, yeah, if you want to close your eyes, if you can, but you don't need to. It needs to be something also that we can just do it with our minds. But that we just become aware that we're here on a Thursday evening, 12th of June, 2025. Wow. And maybe it's Thursday, so we had maybe a busy week, or the week is almost done. And we can just try to ask ourselves, okay, why am I here? What do I want to achieve, accomplish by joining these blah, blah, blah talks with this strange monk? What is my motivation, my intention for being here? And whatever it is, our intention or motivation, we can always check if we can increase it or expand it. Because maybe our motivation or our intention might be limited by either something more short term, like, just having a good night of sleep tonight. Maybe we can motivate ourselves for that. Or maybe we can just survive the rest of the week, and that's okay as well. But here we have an opportunity to actually develop our own mind, to train our own mind in order to find ways to manage, to decrease, and to eventually completely eliminate all types of difficulties, all types of dissatisfaction, problems, suffering. So that's what the Dharma can actually do for us. Not only now, not only tomorrow, not only by the end of the week, but forever. And that would be an incredible already. But if we think about it, can you imagine living in a world as we live today and we being completely happy, satisfied, peaceful, and all of the other beings, people, animals suffering around us? So Dharma can help us expand that wish for wanting to be free from any dissatisfaction, issues, problems, suffering, not only for ourselves, but for others as well. We expand to others' well-being. We think about their well-being as well. And not only we think, but we create a wish to do something about it. And for that, we need tools, we need the skills, we need wisdom. And maybe that's what we can try to learn by joining these talks and classes. Because even though the monk doesn't know much, but the Dharma is perfect, it's a perfect tool to develop ourselves towards this goal of helping others. So we try to generate this intention that the next hour that we spend together by listening, by talking, by contemplating, may help us to go towards that wish, that intention of not only eliminating our own suffering, but helping to eliminate the suffering of others. So in this tradition, what we do as well is that we try to generate this intention by making aspirational prayers, as we say. So they're just aspiration. They are not necessarily something that we need to, do it, but it's just something that helps us. Because if we just create that and then we don't remember or don't emphasize it enough, we get lost. We forget. We get turned into our day-to-day addiction of thinking only of our own self, on our own happiness, and we forget others. So I'm gonna share with you these prayers, and then we can just think that we would want to use this time wisely. And this prayer is going to help us motivate ourselves. If we get lost during the talk, we can go back to this prayer. Okay? So I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Very well. So now we created our motivation, our compass. Now we just need to walk. So that's what we need to do now. That becomes now the most difficult part. Because now we need to start actually checking how we do that. And we checked a little bit last week, right? We talked about why do we need to train our minds? Because right now we might understand why we need to go to the gym, because it's to get healthy. We talked about to get strength. You all said something about, being healthy, being strength, and like, having our bodies. But we don't do the same with our minds. We just allow our minds to run free, as we say, and not necessarily this the way or where is it leading us. It's bringing us where we want. So we need to start realizing that actually we need to start paying attention more and more to our mental state, because the state of our mind is much more important than we might be aware in relation to providing us experiences to make our lives happy or suffering. That means that even though right now we might not understand what that means, we can actually observe our lives. And we can start, because probably most of you that are here already started to realize that material things, that people, that experiences, that objects don't give us en- enough happiness that makes us see and say, okay, I had enough. I don't need anything else anymore. I don't need to, be chasing money or recognition or status or anything like that. Actually, we already started to observe it, but we still continue chasing these things, isn't it? In some ways, we are still believing that those things can bring us happiness. And especially what type of happiness that we want. Because if we think about it, when we chase, when we are looking for something, we are not looking just to have a little bit of a, short-term type of happiness. When we engage with these objects, with these situations, with people, we want happy ever after. Do you know this? You know? This is what we actually look for. We want happy. We want happiness all the time. We want to be, satisfied. We want to be peaceful. We want to be, I had enough. I don't need to be with this constant craving and chasing and feeling that there is something missing, that there is something not there, something that is kind of like, I need something. Do you recognize that feeling? Do you recognize that wish that we are constantly thinking, even though we have an amazing car, an amazing relationship, a job, or whatever, there is always that feeling that there is something missing. And that is very important for us to understand, that that is like what we are actually doing. We are seeking happiness that lasts, that stays, that doesn't end. But what we experience when we are in these, engaging with houses and food and family and job and money and fame, it's something very ephemeral, temporary pleasures that stay for a very short, long time. a short time, and then they go away, they disappear. And that means that we need to be constantly chasing them, constantly looking for them, constantly wanting more and more and more and more. Does it make sense? And the problem starts to happen when we don't get what we want. When something like, we lose our job, or we have a breakup, our partner leaves us, or we become sick, we have some disease that we don't want to have, or someone that we love dies suddenly, or people start to treating us badly, talking about us, our friends become our enemies, isn't it? And then what do we do in these situations? How do we manage? How do we actually know what to do with that? Because this is what we can, and that is the aim of Lojong, of mind training, is creating in the way of giving us the tools, creating our own tools to manage those situations that don't that create that type of suffering when we don't have the happiness that we want to achieve. And those tools are not something that normally we'd be taught in school, that nobody actually told us, or that we can get on Instagram and all of that. But because normally what these people are talking about is that they are looking for the solution for how to manage these problems. What Buddhism you would say in a wrong place, because we are looking for kind of like the solution in only in trauma and kind of like problems that we have now. But if we actually look into the root of the problem, this is not really the root of the problem. And that when Buddhism starts to come up with a different solution, with a different perspective. Well, the thing is that even if we change our relationship, our outside world, our partner, if we get more money, if we get that, they don't prevent from these issues and problems to arise again in the future. Isn't it? Make sense? How many times we already change partners, or we already change cars, or we change, jobs, or we change looking for, that feeling of like, now I found it. And sometimes we get it, but sometimes we get it for like 10 years and it looks amazing. But then something comes. Or maybe 20 years, or maybe 30 years, and then something comes. So that means that we need to start looking inside, that we really need to start looking into the root of this. And for the Buddhist point of view, what we're going to say, it is the root of our problems. It's actually our misconception of the true nature of how things exist. That sounds a big phrase. That means, to make it easier, is that we believe that we understand, or we think, or we really are convinced that we understand how life is, and we understand how things work, that we know how to get happiness, and we know how to, be free from any problems and sufferings. But one thing is that the way we think things are and the way things really are, the way things really exist and the way they appear, or the way that we perceive them. That is what we start to understand a little bit more about the real problem. The real problem starts to arise when we start to look at things in a way that is opposite to actually how they are. So, for example, we are looking for permanent happiness in things that can only stay for a while. So, things that are impermanent by their nature, for example, our own lives, our own bodies, the life of others, objects, money, everything. It's constant changing. But we don't perceive it like this. We don't experience life in this way. We experience life with permanent. I want that, I don't know when if there is an expression in English that says, it's how can I say, is something like it it's we don't want things to be over when we are having fun, something like that. That's how it is, our minds. We don't want things to be over when we are actually enjoying what we want, isn't it? The thing is, they will be completely over. They will finish. The chocolate, as Lama Yeshe used to say, will run out one day, right? So we, by not realizing that, we suffer when things finish because we are looking for permanence. We are looking for things not to be as they actually are. So that misconception of how things exist and how things are, it's a concrete reality. We really believe that the perception that we have is completely a reality that everyone else is experiencing. And we don't check and we don't see and we don't actually observe and kind of like analyze, and we don't how do I say, debate or kind of like challenge or doubt that what we are seeing, it's a projection of our mental habits, of our fears, of our wishes and wants. We think that everybody around us is having the same experience. Like, for example, you're all here listening to this blah, blah, blah from this monk. And each of you are having a completely different experience. You know? Maybe Deb is saying, "Oh God, the accounting is very boring. I'm tired. Oh, I'm getting bored." And then maybe Tal is saying, "Oh yes, that's interesting. Oh, that's Or maybe Alex and Hannah is like, maybe we should change the channel." Or maybe someone is thinking, Deepa is saying, "I have no idea what counting is trying to say." And Angela and her partner and the dog are like, what is he talking about? I know he's trying to say something. So we are all completely having our experience, right? We don't think like that. When we are seeing Cowden and listening to Cowden, what we are perceiving, what we are actually receiving, we believe that we are all having the same experience. We don't understand and we don't realize that it is completely our perception. It's a projection, it's a contaminated projection of our own mind. So because we don't see it like that, what happens is that we act upon, we react out of this projection. And then instead of finding ways to be happier, finding ways to actually, alleviate our suffering, what we do is that we create more suffering. We create more problems because we want something that is impermanent to be permanent. We something that we see as permanent to be not to realize that it is impermanent. That is the problem. Then we start to create all of these kind of like complexities and stories, and we chase things, and then we create problems for ourselves. And I don't know if you had that situation that you realize that you're like, oh wow, how did I ended up here? Or like I think that there is a special expression that says it's all my own doing. It's my own doing. It's me doing all of this to myself because of this misperception, this misconception of how things are. So that it is something that we really start to realize that is our fundamental problem. And that this brings, because of this fundamental problem, this fundamental misconception, this creates more and more. The little cat, I have a little cat. My mom has a little cat who wants to come here. So this creates more and more problems and confusion in our lives. So when we don't see things as they are, and then we start to look into ways of kind of like finding for solutions for these, we actually create more problems. And then we go into more problems and more problems into a kind of like a wheel of problems. And one of the main points of our misconception is that actually is the basis of all our problems is that we perceive ourselves, that's what the Buddhist path is going to say, is that we perceive ourselves as being completely independent. That misconception of how things work makes us believe that we are completely independent from others, that we are completely self-sustainable, that we are completely, how can I put it, that we are separated from everything and everyone, that we are completely autonomous, and that we are the center of the universe. Do you recognize that? That you recognize that because of this wrong perception, we start to believe that we are, the center of the universe, and that our happiness is more important, and it's only is the almost the only important thing in this world. And we started to think, how can all of these people around me not doing what I want to be happy? How they don't perceive that I need this, that that I need help, that I need, to be treated well, that I needed to be, people need to be kind to me, that people need to be generous to me, that, do you understand? Do you recognize that we do that? Do you recognize that we have that idea that our minds are completely, that we are complete, the world is here to serve us, to fulfill only what we want, how, and in the color and shape and everything like this. Just that. And that is a very important point, because that is a concept, a misconception of reality, of thinking that we are independent when in reality we are completely interdependent. Interdependence doesn't mean emotional dependent. Okay, because normally when we call about dependency, we think, oh no, but I am like, no, I depend, I don't want to be dependent on others. No, it's the opposite. It's like we are interdependent. Interdependence means that things arise because of a combination of causes and conditions, that we only exist because of our parents, because of the food, because of the sun, because of the water, because of all the people that we have in our lives, that we can feel loved and cared, because we are social beings. As the Dalai Lama always says, we are social beings. We need each other. But we don't see it like that. You know? We create the opposite. Our society create the opposite in our idea. That the more independent, self-sufficient I am, the happier I will be. And then I don't know you, but I was doing some research and studies and some things, because I was doing a teaching also about Lojong in Spain, for a center in Spain, and I was looking about the rates and a little bit more information about suicide. And I was trying to understand, like, how does suicide like really happens. And I was checking that in especially developed countries, like in the north of Europe, or all of that, many of the biggest majority of men that commit suicide is between the age of 70 and 80. And then you start to say, why? Right? These are the people that actually lived and then they had everything and all of that. So it's a bit like, what is going on? How does it work? And one of the explanations is the too much independency. That people become so independent that they don't need others. And they start to feel lonely. And then they start to feel that they are not worthy or that they don't know what to do, that they are really, then they commit suicide. So if you think about it, we need to start really challenging our views and checking if this independency, as we think, it is something that is actually beneficial for us. It's not because someone else says, but our own experience. Because that self-centered attitude, that attitude of just me, myself, and I being the most important being or the most important thing in the world, not necessarily is going to bring what we want. And this is exactly the main point of mind training. We say in Buddhism, as we were discussing, that now that we have the problem, the main issue of the main root of our problem is this misconception of reality. Is this wrong view, believing that we understand the way and the nature of things and the way they appear to us to be the same, but the way things are and the way they appear to us, very different. No? We said things appear to us permanent when they are impermanent. Things appear to us independent when they are interdependent. So this is one of the aspects, and that creates that sense of selfishness, of self-centeredness, of being the center of the universe. So then Buddhism is going to bring with two types of solutions. One solution that is going to tackle that wrong view, and one solution, well, not one solution, sorry, I'm going to put like this. Solutions are two tracks. One track is going to tackle that root of the wisdom and trying to develop an understanding, a corrective view, a correct understanding that is in harmony with reality, okay, between what appears and what it is and how things are, that to be in harmony. So this is one track. And the other track is what we call the skillful means. And those skillful means, or the development of a correct viewing in relation to the way we experience, the way we behave, the way we are. And that is going to tackle that self-centeredness, that independency. Is going to talk about how to develop a more altruistic mindset, a mindset that is more in relation to reality, to making this interdependency beneficial not only for one side of the table but to everybody. Does it make sense? So Lojong, these practices that we're going to see in the next few weeks, their aim is for that. Their aim is to check and to help us develop a much more altruistic mindset, to help us develop a mind that is not so self-absorbed, a mind that is not just thinking about my own happiness. And here, I need to always make a point because normally when I talk about this, or, we have a tendency to think, oh, then I need to forget about my own happiness. That's sometimes how it comes to us. If I have to think about others, I need to forget me. And it's really not so much like that. We need to develop what what His Holiness the Dalai Lama says. We need to be wisely selfish. That is very important. That means that we need to start realizing what truly brings us to that lasting, to that forever and ever type of happiness. We need to start using our own mind and our own body and our own speech to go more towards that and less towards just temporary, ephemeral type of pleasures. So this is what we kind of like start to develop by learning about Lojong, about mind training. We're going to start to use tools that would describe it thousands of years ago, that we would say, wow, but then their lives were very different and we have different things, but it's actually extremely accurate for our lives right here and right now. So we're just going to start to actually understand that that is the goal of those teachings, but not to forget about ourselves. It's changing our behaviors so we can achieve that happiness that is long and fulfilling for a long time, forever. Does it make sense? Yes? Do you have any questions or doubts or commenters or considerations so far? Angela is following, Alex, Hannah, Deepa, Bob, who is here now joining us. Any questions or
Can you hear
any
me?
yes.
I think you are reading my mind lately. This week has been crazy, and it's like you are watching me.
You don't know, but I am a part of this AI company that we receive all of your information on your phone, is being recorded and I
I
receive
think so.
so I can give good Dharma talks. That's how it works. Yes, Alex, I know. I think that actually what I'm saying is everybody's weak in a way, It's everybody's world and life in some ways. With, of course, ups and downs. And sometimes I always say that it's difficult sometimes that when we are having a good timing, a good week, we forget about these things. And then I always say it hits the fan, the problem hits the fan, and then we are like, and then we get so out of control, and then we go into so deep negative mind states, isn't it? We go into kind of like in reactions that are so extreme. In either we go, can you guys give me 1 second? Let me just put the cat out because she started to go a bit nuts. Come here. No, come here. Sorry. She's also a sentient being wanting to go. She was tired of the blah, blah, blah talk. I understand her. So, as I was saying, is that we normally, we when we are having good weeks and good times, and then next time, Melissa, I will show you the cat. We start to really believe that, but I don't have any problems. I don't need to, change or train my mind. We don't kind of really have that feeling of usefulness because we are having a good time. And normally, having a good time means there's a perfect experience, not experience, definition of what happiness is. And normally, happiness is meeting our objects of attachment. We say that. And when I hear about that, I say, wow, that is actually quite profound. It is true. We become happy when we have the pizza, when we have the person, when we have this, when we are meeting, when we are meeting in the way of like when we are either eating, either hearing, either seeing, either touching, either smelling, something that we like, isn't it? That's what we call happiness. That's how we say, yes, that's what happiness is. So when our senses are getting what they want and what they like, then no need to check our minds and to check, if our self-cherishing and our self-centered attitude are actually creating any problem for ourselves. Because the ego is in the ego is in the on the is the boss, is the pilot, and is getting what he wants. So, but then things start to go wrong. Then we cannot get whatever because of so many circumstances and conditions that we are not in control, which we think we are, but we're not. And then we start to look for ways of dealing with that. And normally, the main way that we kind of like deal with situations is through anger. And anger has two aspects. We either, anger means when attachment doesn't get what it wants, or when we get something, when we don't get what we want, or we get something that we don't want, isn't it? We don't want it today to rain, and it's raining because it's my wedding day and I got, very angry, isn't it? And then anger can be turned towards others, outside, object, situation, person, politicians, whatever, or it can be towards ourselves. And that's when, depression, low self esteem, and suicidal things, all of that happens. So that means that we need to start having an idea and understanding that if we train our minds into not thinking only about ourselves, when we are in these low moments, we can use that negative situation that we are in to actually expand our love and our compassion. And that is when we start to really enjoy problems. That's when we really start to say, wow, actually, if my life has ups and downs, and especially now the downs are the best, because I not only know how to deal with them, but I use it to open my heart, to change my selfish attitude. And by changing my self attitude and by changing my kind of like independency, my independent attitude, the more I do that, the happier I become, the more fulfilling my life becomes, the more stable my happiness is. Because I start to realize that happiness, it's an internal aspect, and especially a mind that is caring, loving, kind to others. It's a state of mind that is embed in those qualities. It's a mind that is like not contaminated by this idea of just me, myself, and I, but just thinking about others, which is exactly the opposite of what we do now. When we are in the low, when we are depressed, when we are angry, what do we want? We go, and then you all can check, and you can all, be very honest with yourselves and look, how do you deal with your anger and, and when your attachment don't get what you want? We have the super extreme ways to dealing with it: drinking, drugs, and bet, and like now a lot of gamings and betting, and like all of these things, and like Las Vegas. That's it. Or, but and we can check, check for yourselves. How do you deal when you don't have what you want, or how you get with the frustration? And then when you do something wrong, when something is not going well, when someone leaves, how do you deal with it? Do you use that opportunity to think about others, to think about how to help others, to think about, to expand your love and compassion and kindness? I don't know you, but I definitely don't. I become even more selfish. I want to eat my entire ice cream for myself and eat the entire pizza, or watch Netflix and just be with myself, and or something like that. I don't know what I have today, what people watch, but like this, I just want to kind of like do whatever I want. Me, 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 me. And we become even snappy with others, isn't it? We become in a bad mood, and then what we do, everybody's the fault. So I'm just gonna do whatever I want. Meh, 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 meh. Isn't it? Totally the opposite of what the mind training is telling us. Mind training is telling us, when you start to realize all of these situations, all of these problems, all of these kind of like, low moments or whatever, use them to develop compassion, kindness, patience. No, and that not only is going to cut the immediate suffering, the immediate dissatisfaction, the immediate, like, feeling that we have, but this will increase our habitual patterns, our tendencies, our, yes, our habits to not fall into those low moments and kind of like negative mindsets anymore. So it's not only helping us now, but it's helping us in the future, planting seeds for us to stop suffering in the future. Does it make sense? Do you follow what I'm saying? Yes, those that I can see the face. Do you? Yes, does it make sense? Can you follow? Can you understand? Because that is so important for us to understand the mechanics of it. For us to understand what does it mean to actually change, to transform and train the mind. For that, we need to understand what we are, how we work now, right? I'm not saying anything new. It's just about observation. That's what the Buddha did. The Buddha didn't invented any of these training, mind training. He just observed his own mind. It's just that we don't do it enough. We don't observe ourselves. We don't observe, not only, we are very good observers of our stories, the stories that the mind creates. No? That I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do, oh yes, this thing, and but we don't understand the working of the mind, how the emotions work, how that I get triggered, and then how I actually, like, I can see the emotion getting, oh, I'm angry, I'm depressed, and then, oh, that creates a craving for me to go and do this. You understand? It doesn't matter if it's soup, if it is ice cream, if it is pizza, if it is drugs, it doesn't matter. Everything is the same. But the mechanics of it, the mechanics is the same. The pizza flavor may be different, but same. So that is because we don't do that. So because we don't do that, then we keep repeating the same way to deal with situations in our lives. And sometimes we learn. Sometimes we say, oh, okay, yes, oh, I could see that I did that. But then we just compensate and we create another way that in the future is going to create suffering as well. Because it is still self-centered. It is still based on these two layers of I am independent and I am the middle, the center of the universe. And that arises from that misconception of how things exist and the perceptions in our mind and how they are not matching. So unless we cut these two things, the self-cherishing, the self-centeredness, and we don't cut the wrong view, the misconception, there's no way, as Rinpoche used to say, no way we can find everlasting peaceful happiness. Not possible. But we started this talk telling and talking and discussing that that is what we want. And that's what actually like Disney is telling us, you know? And they were happy ever after, isn't it? That's what we want. That's what we're chasing. The good thing about Buddhism that I like it so much is that actually there is a happy ever after. There is happiness forever. Because at some point I got a bit disillusioned in blah, blah, blah. You got it? Yes, disillusioned. That actually we could not find this type of happiness. That we just, would have to deal with these little pleasures and that was it. But Buddhism said, no, 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 it can. We can achieve. We can get there. If we cut the problems that are covering and not allowing us to experience it. So the mind training, as I said, we say that these are the two wings of a bird. The method and the compassion, or of this, like these two methods that will tackle the self-cherishing and will tackle the misconception. So the wisdom that will tackle the misconception, and the altruistic mind that will tackle the self-cherishing, the self-centeredness. So these two are the wings of a bird that is free to fly wherever it wants. That's very beautiful. So mind training, Lojong, the main focus in some ways, of course, the wisdom part is always going to be there underlying because it is the basis, but is mainly tackling that wing of developing a more altruistic mindset. So when we're going to go through the text in the next few classes, you guys need to have that in the back of the mind. That is the aim, that is the goal. That the goal is to develop a more altruistic mind, a more compassionate mind, a more kind, a more generous, a more patient mind. Because these, as we say, by being wisely selfish in training our minds like these, not only we stop the suffering now, the present moment suffering, but we create the seeds to not have those sufferings in the future, and we create the seeds to have happiness, nice experiences in the future, until we completely eliminate and we live our lives with that sense of wanting to benefit others all the time. So everything that we do, even breathing, even eating, is for the benefit of others. That means that I need to be all the time doing something for others? No, you can be meditating in a cave and you're going to be able to do that. How? Because through the power of your intention, people will get inspired by that. And that can already help others. Or people will see that you are actually putting effort to benefit others. So people will get inspired to transform themselves as well. Not by direct only. Benefit doesn't need to be, I give you money, I give you food, I give you this. This not necessarily is the only way to help others. Maybe it's a thought, maybe it's it's a word that we say, maybe it's just an intention in the mind. And how this intention will manifest doesn't matter. If it's going to be blue, yellow, green, purple, no problem. Freedom. It can be many ways, but the intention is there. So these texts, or the Lojong, the training, is aim for developing and purifying that intention, that altruistic intention, more and more and more. Yes? Because I need to put into a context what we are studying. Because we're going to study a text that maybe doesn't make sense to all of you if it doesn't have a completely understanding of the aim of it. I'm putting the compass here. I'm helping us to, set up the compass for us to understand and why we're going to study this text. Yeah? You guys are very quiet today. I thought that I was the one cold. So, but is there's any questions or any doubts or any Alex, you wanna tell anything else? Melissa, Deepa. Deepa wrote something here. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Let me check. Is there a teaching on grief and loss in the mind training? Um, Let me think. Specifically for grief and loss, this text doesn't have it, a specific for it, but in some ways is going to give us some tools that will help us with grief and loss. Because grief and loss is something that is it's it's difficult, very difficult, but it comes from that first understanding that I was talking about, that permanence. The best meditation or the best training for grief and loss is study, contemplating, and meditating on impermanence, of understanding that things finish, you know, that even life of others finish. And then instead of putting ourselves down, that creates that wish of like, oh, but I'm still alive and other people that I love and care is still alive. So what can I do with the time that I have? What can I do in order to create beneficial relationships, beneficial seeds for myself and others? Then this inspire us. So, by using the grief and the loss, we can actually inspire ourselves to use our times wisely. We can use we can get inspired to don't waste our times with problems and small little things, but actually really think of what matters. Does it help, Tipa?
Yes, that's thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Anything, any questions or any other commentaries? Is there Bob Tal? Yes, Bob. Please save me.
Um, I'm going to go back to the kind of the same theme that I spoke about last time, which is you talk about training the mind, but you don't talk about awareness.
Yes, because the awareness is something that there's two layers. I think that's what I said last time again about the layers of awareness. We can say that awareness is just being aware of what's going on in the present moment, right? Just like, oh yeah, what's happening? Oh yeah, I'm aware of what is happening. You can say that. But we can use the word awareness as also talking about the nature of the mind, right?
Agreed. Yes.
So the nature of the mind is what we are discussing now, that we want to train our minds to I don't know if they exist this word, but like take out the obstructions that are not allowing us to completely be one with or in harmony with the awareness that we already are. So that's what I said about, in some ways, that idea of, if we cut that self-cherishing. Why we talk first about taking out the self-cherishing? Because it's the most manifested aspect of our mind, isn't it? That's why I'm always playing and making fun of me, myself, and I. But that is the main record in our lives, isn't it? It's just thinking about me, myself, and I, and me, myself, and I. So this is in some ways easier to check. And then we talk a little bit more subtle, that misconception of our wrong view of how things exist and the nature of how things exist, and the misconception of how they appear to us. And even in that level, we also going to have that we can eliminate the appearances, let's say, that the way that we interpret these appearances. That is the first level of what we can actually, purify and clean out of our system, let's say. But we still have that contaminated appearance, that even if things, I understand that they are not in the way that they appear, but they still appear to me wrong. And then we can even eliminate that. So we don't have any more a wrong appearance. We just have a completely harmony with reality. And that what we would say that is the nature, or we are kind of like realizing awareness. We are just being awareness. There's no more conceptualizing, no more imaging, no more projecting, no more, Rinpoche used to say, no more designing, no more painting, no more, whatever it is. Does it make sense? Does it help?
Totally. Absolutely.
That is how kind of like the levels that we can go. So these teachings is in some ways not the first level, but like because it's quite a bit more advanced, like the Lojong, but it is about understanding how the mind works in relation to the creation of the issues and the dissatisfaction, and how that create then our self-cherishing, and that self-cherishing creates all the other issues that we have in our lives. Why we suffer because of grief and loss, why we suffer because we have attachments, why we suffer because of angry, why we suffer, as Alex was saying, why he had a difficult week, right? That is based on these teachings and understanding of the self-cherishing and self-centered attitude. So we need to first tackle that. So once we have a mind that is a bit free and clear from these more manifested difficulties, issues, negativities, and emotions, and whatever, and so forth, then we can go deeper into understanding, the perception and tackling the perception and correcting our wrong view. Does it make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah? That is a
Yes.
little bit more the idea. Thank you, dear. You always good questions.
Thank you.
Olá.
Olá, oi, tudo bom? I'm sorry, I was going to speak in Portuguese. So, and how do you get there? Like only through meditation?
Not necessarily. You guys gonna see this text. I already asked Anthony. He's gonna put somewhere so we can have the text as well. It's not only meditation. It's very kind of like clear. It says something like in the terms of when someone's treat us badly, we respond with kindness and love. So it's a very direct, very concrete, right? It's not just kind of like, oh, you sit down and breathe and meditate. It's not like that. No, it's like when someone is like, throwing something at you, you don't throw it back. When they're throwing like stones at you, you throw flowers to them. Something like this. It's very concrete, it's very mature, very, but of course, and then people are going to say, but then I should just like, that is what we're going to discuss many, many times, because that is sometimes the way we understand those teachings is like, then I should just be a doormat, where everybody just step on me and I just need to accept everything. No, the opposite is understanding that if you free yourself from that mind that wants to go an eye for an eye, right? That expression, no, an eye for an eye, that we want to like revenge, we are creating more suffering for ourselves. So we transform that first, the mind, yes? And then the way we're going to respond to that situation is going to be completely different. The way we're going to answer. So a stone in that person so they stop, kind of like throwing a stone. We do it, but we do it in a completely different motivation and mindset. Do you understand? So it's not so much about like the external result, but it's about transforming the way we react, the way we respond to these situations by training the mind first, and then with situations that arise in our daily lives, right? Not situations that we need to meditate on. It's just the way it happens in our minds right now, so we can actually put into practice in that moment, because that's what we need. The amount of time that we sit down and meditate is, maybe 10 minutes out of 24 hours. So the other 24 hours are the 23 hours and 50 minutes are very important. So these teachings are in a way for being practical to be used like that. Yeah, makes sense?
Yes.
Yes?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, dear. Okay, dears, if nothing else, we're gonna start slowly finishing, because I said to you guys that I would try to keep it to 1 hour and 10 or something, or 1:15, so it doesn't get too tiring for you online. And so then, as I say, the most important part of these teachings is to not use it just as conceptual or philosophical or a mental knowledge. You try to put it in your life, try to use it to your life. So many of these things that we discussed today, just really checking and saying, oh yes, is it true that the root of my problem is misconception? What does it mean, a misconception? And it is true that I am, the self-cherishing, my like self-centered and egoistic and selfish attitude. Does it really create problems to me? Just ask yourself these things, right? Keep that in your mind. Yes, Bob.
You brought up a point that I just want to emphasize, that people, you talk about the mind, and you spoke about the story that people tell themselves about themselves.
Yes.
It's the story we don't know we've been using
Yes.
and telling about ourselves. And so what?
Go on. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Go.
No, I'm just saying that to become
Yes.
aware of that story that we have unconsciously been allowing to define who we are as the mind. So when we talk about changing the mind, we're really saying that story is not applicable anymore.
Yes, that is exactly this. Thank you so much. This is very beautiful way to say, because that is exactly this. The thing is that sometimes we are aware of this, right? Sometimes, as you say, is our reality. We limit ourselves thinking that this is how we are, and we don't even realize that we can be different or that we are in a certain way, right? That is the two things. Sometimes we don't realize, or we are not aware of how we are. One thing, and sometimes we don't realize that we can actually change. So these are the aspects that we have. And not only this, but sometimes when we do become aware and we realize that we want to change, we don't know what to do. And then what we ended up doing is creating a different type of idea or a different type of kind of like, as I say, we just change clothes, that's what we do. And then in a couple of years, in a couple of lifetimes, as Buddhism is going to say, we have the same problem, right? So here, those teachings is to cut completely so we don't create another limiting idea about ourselves, but we break them completely and we are free from limiting ideas. That is the main goal. The main goal. Now I talked and I say it looks like the mango, the mango. So that is what we kind of like. That is, I think, it is a biggest, and I try to emphasize. So thank you for bringing that in a different way, Bob, because this is the potential of the teachings. This is the potential of the Dharma. We need to be careful, and I mean we, and especially I think myself, that I've been in the Dharma a little bit, and that we don't dilute it and we just create a way that is something just for us to feel good or to just have a little bit more of a comfortable life. That is a result, but this is not the goal. The goal is to actually eliminate completely our suffering, completely our limiting ideas, eliminate completely our dissatisfaction, and but realize that state of completely peaceful and peace and lasting happiness that we already have within ourselves. So we just become one with that. We become in peace with that. We become, just that manifestation from this love and kindness and compassion and peace that we already have within. That is the idea. Okay? So try to see if anything that these crazy monks said today, if anything made any sense, any of these blah, blah, blah. But as I always say, and especially, the Buddha used to say, analyze, investigate, make sure that it makes sense for you, use to your own life, put it into practice, but especially don't believe in anything that I say, and check, doubt, investigate, and say, okay, let me put today, this week, the rest of my week until Sunday, let me check how if selfishness, if my mind is selfish, and when I am selfish, this creates problems for me. Try to ask yourself this question, just try to ask yourself this question. Wait a minute, again, if I am selfish, does it create problems to me? Does it create suffering? Just ask yourself that. Check. Maybe you don't even need to ask. Maybe you see yourself being selfish, when there's someone in line, or you try to cut the line, or you try to get something, or many things that we normally do, like we're in the supermarket, and then they open the next cashier, and then you're like, you go running, these things that we do, like me, my time is more important, I have these things that we do. Or when you're driving and someone wants to pass, and you go a little bit, like fast, so the person doesn't cut in front of you. All of these things, small little details that we do. So just check. And those moments when you catch yourself, just ask, is this actually created, or this is create some sort of that feeling of anxiety of, that actually is there's nothing good in that. It's agitation of the mind. The mind is agitated. The experience is agitation. And we think that this is happiness. We are totally nuts. Totally. That's good. Good, because now we are understanding. Now we can actually do something about it. Okay? Okay, dear. So thank you so, so much. Hope this was useful. Hope that it makes any sense. And that we can continue slowly developing this understanding of how we can train the mind. Okay? Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful weekend. And I see you on Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Are you having class on Tuesday next week?
Yes, Tuesday next week, yes, because last Tuesday, unfortunately, I had to guide 5 hours puja, so I couldn't be there.
Is it teaching or just practice?
It's teaching. We're going to do the
Teaching.
Lam Rim in a subtle way, let's say like that. We're going to do Lam Rim coming up, because Lojong is a little bit more tongue, but we're going to go and we're going to do a bit of that. Yeah? And on Sunday, I see you all over there at Center.
Yes.
You can go.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you. Good night.
Have a good evening.
Oh, thank you.
Margaret.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you, Venerable.